There can also be a sense of the ground of being that is encountered through a way of contemplation, a way of inquiry or exploration, perceiving more from a sense of being, placing our attention wholly, fully upon, let's say, a question, an inquiry question, or a contemplation. It's a kind of gathering of consciousness. And sometimes it's through meditation techniques which interiorize the mind or interiorize attention into a state of deep, deep stillness, for example, that really helps our consciousness recede from the world of form into a very distilled quality of depth in this sense of quiet. And we do this really when we fall asleep at night. There's a kind of receding into sleep, and we leave the activity of the senses and go into this deep sense of rest. And when we go into this sense of depth, which is not only during sleep, but let's say for the purposes of this evening talk, you could just get a sense of taking what I was saying further, what I was saying earlier about unhooking from the activity of assigning and defining and describing experience and referencing subject and object, and just coming into that sense of resting down and in. And then to really gather your energy further into a deeper, deeper, deeper sense of stillness and quietude and resting, then there's this kind of pull of energy into a kind of stillness that really subtracts it out of the more yang aspects of the moment into that very yin experience that takes you to a kind of like reset. Now, when you think of a computer and you think of powering down the computer, and then, later when you turn it on, you're rebooting it, you're firing it up, and then it kind of assembles all of the particulars of the operating system. It's much like our own consciousness. We wake up in the morning and it all starts to reassemble. Like, oh, it's daylight, or it's this time of the morning, and oh, it's this day of the week, it's this season of the year, and oh, this is what I need to be doing today. And before you know it, there's this like quick booting up of our system, and then we're off into the program that we have set for the day, on our schedule or our routines and what have you. So when there's this exploration of the ground of being that's more interiorized and withdrawn from all of that quick assembly of sense of self, there's this sense of going into a deep reset mode. And some people describe this as going into a sense of void, or I just use the term velvety darkness. There, can be that sense of the senses receding from the world of form into this, taking this deep, deep dip into the well of stillness that is really prior to any attributes of like color, sound, identity, overlays, etc. So there can be this sense of deeply interiorizing and touching into this sense of ground that once again is a realm of the unconditional, the unconditioned. So it's this direct encounter with a sense of beingness that is not ascribed all these attributes. It's prior to that. And when we have our attention move in this way and go to a more interior meditative experience, or even go to sleep at night, but it's a different thing when we do so consciously, and we deliberately have the intention to encounter this velvety darkness or this depth. It's different than when we just kind of check out and go to sleep, where there's a kind of intimacy with that sense of void, or velvety darkness is a nicer way of putting it. Because a lot of times the mind has associations with void as a very, kind of empty, scary thing. And the mind will project those notions onto this sense. But in actuality, it can be a very restful state that you really need to use the word void. Sometimes I like to say just entering into the sense of the womb of the universe, I like to call it. It's just that kind of interiorizing, and often the internal gaze drops down into the lower belly, into this area that is in the female body, associated with the womb. It's a kind of dropping of attention into that area of the hara, and just letting it sink into that sense of darkness that is always available to receive the light of our attention. So it's that marriage of opposites, of having the light of our attention enter into that dark, so that we might know it more consciously as this sense of the unconditioned ground of being, that sense of being that is free of our sense of personal self and even all of our notions of life and the world. And it allows us this deep nourishment in stillness that can help reset our whole system, can reset the nervous system, the body, the mind, and our notions of self and life. And it's a place that we call it a place, or a state, I guess, would be more accurate, a state that we can enter into and go back to neutral ground.